Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Raid Shadow Legends. Happy Wednesday, happy midweek. Not a whole lot of exciting stuff going on right now, at least until Friday when we have, more champion summon related stuff, champion chase part 2, which we'll talk about in another video. In today's video, though, I do want to talk about artifacts. There are a lot of artifact sets in the game. More and more are being added every month or so, when they bring out something new. And I want to talk about this both from a new player perspective. I'm going to try to get all perspectives, early game, mid game, and end game, and which are some of the artifacts that you should keep around, what you should consider. So we're going to be ranking all of them here. This is the first time that I've ever done something like this, actually, to really get to the bottom of what is worth keeping. As you notice at the top of my screen, I'm at 2,000. My artifacts are maxed out. I need to sell. And so part of this is going to kind of help you guys as well as to kind of what I keep around and what I sell. Now, in an early game perspective, and I want to get this out of the way now before I get into the rest of the video, there's something called stats over sets. And that means if you have a really good piece of gear, for example, then you're gonna, my head's in the way here, right? Defense 50%. I wouldn't normally keep things like defense set anymore, but in the early game this matters quite a lot, right? If you have something that's really good and you can get something that has good stats, then that makes more difference than, say, just forcing a set together, even if the gear pieces themselves aren't very good. Now, I would say by around, and I'm just ballparking here a little bit, by about 5 or 6 months in, you're probably moving past the stat stage and more into the actual sets, which is why I'm doing this video, to kind of get to the bottom of which ones are good. Now, before we get started with the rest of the video, I do want to remind people that if you haven't started playing Raid yet, well, or you want to make a new account, then use that QR code in the top right hand of the screen to get Narmad the Returned absolutely free. And also these three amazing epics. We have Allure, Tagore, and Ruella at accounts level 10, 20, and 30. And don't forget that you can get a free Void Legendary Support Champion named Tahanarak. Very great character, by the way. Using the promo code Desert Queen within the first 48 hours of a brand new account. Okay. So let's get started with the tier list. We have S plus. We have S. We have A. Actually, I probably could have. You know what? I'm probably just gonna let's get rid of S plus. I think we don't need that. We have S, A, B, C, and Easy Silver, aka you probably will be selling. Now, I do want to talk about I'm going to try and do one tier list for everyone. And this is probably going to be more towards the players that are in the kind of 5 months plus range of the game. If you're very early, and I'll talk about each one of them, but if you're really, really early, again, you're probably wanting to think about what stat that piece has and what kind of value that has for you, right? Certain items are going to have, like, again, the defense 50%, or you could have a gloves that have, I don't know, crit rate, speed for boots. It's really important, and I've said this in other videos, speed, but 95% of the time you're going to want speed main stat boots, and you may very well just use a random gear piece so that you can have a 5 or 6 star main stat speed boots. Those are very important, right? And you're not necessarily thinking about the set, but as you get further on, you are going to want to think about these sets. So let's just get started with the life set. Okay, so I made a new account recently, and even within the first few days, I'll be honest, like, I used this maybe in the first 3 or 4 days, and then by like about a week in, I stopped using all these beginner sets. It has to be really good. The item has to be really good on their substats and all of that. And typically you're looking at probably purple gear and above, like 5 star purple gear and above, for you to even consider using these very noob sets. So, life set, offense set, defense set, and I'll be honest, I do have, you might have seen that I do have some of them in here, right? Defense is a couple pieces still in there, but by and large, I don't use this anymore. And even as a beginner, maybe like a week or two, and then after that, because of how easy it is to get certain gear now, at least in other game, and I'll be honest that I did do this for like maybe the first week or two, but beyond that, I just think that you're not going to use a lot of these beginner sets. You can see that I don't even have this anymore, and so when you're definitely moving into the mid game, this does not even compute anymore. So defense is up there. Crit rate, I do want to give a little bit of a nod to this one a little bit more, because It's good as a filler piece because when it comes to uh, I don't know if it's B good, but it's like I'm kind of torn because it's like in between B and C. I have used this as a filler piece because it's really important to understand that a lot of your DPS characters are going to need to get as close to 100% crit rate as possible, and especially in the beginning stages, the easiest way for you to do this is by using that crit rate set. It's also a two-piece set, right? So you can get an extra 12% crit rate. Again, if you have a really good piece like this speed boots here above, then it's going to make a pretty big difference for you to have like a two-piece crit rate set to get your DPS towards that 100% crit rate. So if you do have some pretty good pieces, consider it, right? Like this weapon here has 16% crit rate on that one, which is not bad. Paired with like a two-piece set. This one here, I have like 21 speed here, which isn't bad, and also some crit rate as well. So you can get some pretty good sets, like 6-star, 5-star pieces of gear on this where it might be valid to use. So I do keep some of these around if I need to squeeze in to get to that 100% crit rate for your attacker type characters. That's kind of important. So I'm gonna put it in B because it's a crit rate set. Now, speed set. This is an A rank for sure. Speed, speed, speed. Speed is so important. Now, the unfortunate thing is that you have to, it's probably the one of the few only good sets on the on the dragon dungeon, right? And speed is really good when it comes to getting as much as possible. Now, for me, this comes in the form of my arbiter. So, arbiter is going to have this, right? And so I'm going to have a lot of speed. Now, I only have 357, which is a lot compared to, some people, especially newer players. But, some people can get like 400 plus. And the way you're going to do that is just the raw speed set because it does give plus 12%, which is a little bit more than, say, Feral, which doesn't give as much. It gives a little bit here and there. And, like, even like some of these accessory pieces give you like 10%. That's good for accessories. Right, but when it comes to actual raw speed, you're going to want to just stack up this. Also, perception does not give nearly that much either. Perception is where's perception? We'll talk about this because I do love this set, but I should have just done that. Perception 5% speed, right? So again, not as much as the 12% from the speed artifact set, but that's why you're using it. You're using speed artifact sets primarily, I would say, for support based characters where speed matters. You're not going to be using this as much when it comes to your attacker based champions. So I am going to be putting it here in the A rank for the speed artifact set. Now, Fury. Right, this is Fury, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to put this in the easy silver category. What is Fury? Well, I don't even know. I'll be honest. I don't even think I have it anymore. Oh, no, I do have a few pieces. Damage increases as HP decreases. It also doesn't tell you by how much. It's a 4-piece set as well, which is not very good, okay? So I'm just going to tell you, just avoid this. It's a lot of these, there's a couple of artifact sets that are extremely niche that you're not going to get a ton of value at. Days is going to be another one. There is a niche usage for this. I just sell this, honestly. I think I have it in there. In fact, it's down here. There's a couple of pieces that I need to sell. 25% chance to place sleep debuff. Where could you get some value out of that? Would be like Sand Devil's Necropolis. But honestly, if you're having to rely on a set bonus, a day set to do this, you might as well just wait for a character that actually has sleep. In fact, you can actually farm a character called Muckstalker out of the campaign. It's a rare who can actually do this significantly easier than having to rely on some gear. To do that, also, it's not guaranteed. So unless you have a really good, again, stats versus sets, right? If you have a very good 6-star piece that is going to give you, say, 60% attack, or you have gloves that are like 80% crit damage, sorry, and some speed boots, that's like the only reason you're going to use that, but you're probably not going to be forming the full 4-piece set. So it is kind of trash. Accuracy. I'm going to put this in the B category with crit damage. Now, accuracy is one of the most important stats in the game, alongside speed, because any character with debuffs need to have the appropriate amount of accuracy in order to land their debuffs. Now, when it comes to campaign missions, this is typically going to be, I would say, most people would say, it's the equivalent of, say, the stage of the dungeon times 10. This is a pretty safe bet, sometimes times 15. Let's say, for example, stage 20, you need around like the 200 to 250 accuracy range to land your debuffs, and it's pretty important, right? So accuracy, if you have any characters with debuffs, squeezing in that accuracy is really important. Now, I don't really use the accuracy set very much anymore. But I used to do it a lot, especially in the early game in the first 3 to 4 months, because you're going to get this in the same place that you get the speed artifact set, which is from the Dragon Dungeon, which a lot of people are going to do in the early game. So again, it's pretty important, but it does drop its usefulness later on. All right, so let's talk about the crit damage set. Now, I'm going to put this in the C tier, and the reason for this is I don't feel that it's as good as crit rate. If you don't have close to 100% crit rate, then why does it matter how much crit damage that you have? Now, I do have some pieces. I don't use a ton of them, but there are some in my inventory, and this is mostly as filler pieces, right? Like if I don't have anything else to do, if I don't have anything else that I can put in there for a two-piece set and I have a really good item, let's say it also contains a lot of crit rate, for example, I might have some of these, I don't know, maybe I do, maybe I don't. You know, sometimes there's some really good pieces here, some speed crit rate, that kind of thing that you can see behind my head, that I might use some of this stuff. I tend to use like things like the Hell Hades artifact optimizer to help me get to where I need to be with stats. But you definitely want to prioritize crit rate before you start stacking crit damage, because again, if you don't have close to 100%, then what's the point of all this crit damage? That's my thoughts anyways, and why it gets a C rank. Now let's talk about, this is not Fury. It's not Destroy. No, it is Destroy. Is that, no, that, sorry, that is Destroy. That is the Destroy set, which I'm also going to put in the C tier, but I do believe it's actually worse than crit damage. And the reason for this is it's super niche, right? That is the Destroy set, in fact. The one boss that you are going to need a Destroy set on is going to be the Scarab King. Okay? This is 95% the reason why you're going to need this. However, there's a much easier way rather than building a Destroy set, in my opinion. There's a particular relic, a gemstone, which helps in a lot of different ways. It's a triangular gemstone, and the wearer's critical hit destroys 1% of the target's max HP per buff on the wearer, stacks up to 20%. I believe it's called Foe Kill. No, sorry, Life Drain. Now, this is not super easy to get right away, but once you get at least one of these, you can just shift that artifact, that relic around to different characters that you need that can basically solo Scarab King. There's a variety of characters out there that can do this, and this will definitely help you get there. Hell, you don't even need to solo a Scarab King, but this alone will help dramatically, and this will more than make up for having a Destroy set that nobody wants to wear anyways. I also have one of those on my Newt, who I also use, and I think I have maybe 3 or 4 of these gemstones, and I think it's going to be a bit easier to collect these as well with Grim Forest being a thing, because you can get gemstones in there as well. So honestly, outside of Destroy set, you really, and what I said before about stats versus sets, you really don't need to use the Destroy set in any other instance. It would be extremely niche otherwise, and maybe somebody's going to get on me at the comments down below, but honestly, I just want to be realistic about how often that you're going to use some of these sets. Okay, now we have the resistance set. I almost want to put, there's better ways to get resistance now that I think it's a sell. I think it's an easy sell. Life Drain, I'm going to put this in C. It does have niche uses in the beginning, but after that, you don't really need to rely on things like Lifesteal anymore. I think eventually at some point, you're going to get a character that has Leech. For example, I'm just using Mikey because he was a free character. But Mikey has Leech on his kit, which allows you to heal. As long as they have the Leech debuff, you heal based on damage done. And so this is essentially like having a lifesteal set, except for your entire team. So, I mean, in the beginning, you get like a free lifesteal set, which I may still have actually on my Kale. I don't know. I think if I look at his gear, I think this is some of the beginner lifesteal set from the start of the game that I'm still using. I got lucky with some of the pieces, I guess. But so I do use it there, but that's it. I don't have it on anyone else. So it's a very early game set, and after that, you're really not going to use it that much, in my opinion. So C tier, but honestly, you could start selling it once you're a little ways in. All right, and that brings us to, I believe, the Avenging set, right? And I'm still going to put this into the trash category here. Honestly, there are so many of these classic Raid Shadow Legends sets that just nobody really uses anymore. The Avenging set, right? And so 45% chance to counterattack when receiving debuffs is way worse than the Retaliation set, which, by the way, you can actually do it at a 2-piece. We'll get to there eventually. You have to receive a debuff. So honestly, again, stats versus sets if you're using specific gear pieces, but outside of that, you're not going to make a 4-piece with this set. We have Curing, right? And this recovers your destroyed HP. There might be some very niche uses for this, like Sand Devil's Necropolis and Hydra. I strongly believe that if you are actually doing that anyways, you probably are not needing to use the curing set. That's just me. I have never used it actually since I play in the game, so I want to be honest and actually probably put it in the trash as well. Nope, sorry. I just talked about avenging, and then I realized there was this frenzy set here. I guess that was also trash. Did I even have any of the frenzy set? I don't even know. Hmm. Frenzy here. 5% turn meter for each debuff received. Trash. And you also need to have 4 pieces to get there. Okay, so now we're back on track. Okay, we have what's this one called again? There's so many. Stalwart. It's actually not the worst. Stalwart is not terrible, okay? So, Stalwart, minus 30% damage taken from enemy AoE attacks. This can be actually pretty good since most dungeon bosses do AoE attacks, right? And namely clan boss. So, if you're in the early game and you have some of this stuff, I would actually use it. I think it's actually pretty good, especially for defensive type characters who don't necessarily put any debuffs out, right? Because that way I feel for characters that are putting out debuffs, you kind of want perception, you want speed, you want accuracy, those kinds of early sets. Stalwart, I think, can be used on pure buffer type characters where you don't need accuracy, but the reduced damage taken for AoE attacks would be very helpful. So again, those pure support type characters, maybe a tank without debuffs, that kind of thing, where Stalwart would be useful. So I do want to kind of acknowledge that one. It is not bad. Frost set, freeze set, whatever it is called, honestly terrible. It requires 4 pieces anyways, and you might as well, if you need frost, you might as well, or if you need freeze, you might as well just use a character that can do that. Reflex. I'm gonna put in the C tier. Some people really like reflex. It's easier to obtain, I suppose, than it comes to the God, what's it called? Relentless set, because Relentless you can only get through tournaments. 40% chance to reduce a random skill cooldown. Now, I just would personally prefer to have more relentless because while it's only 18% chance, it will then give you a cooldown reduction on all your skills, right? Whereas reflex is only one random skill cooldown. So that's the downside to that one. But some people really like this one. I haven't really used this that much. Also, I believe it comes from Ice Golem, which I hate to farm anyways. So that is something, it's not a sell, but you might get some use out of it if you have a good set. It just might take you a long time to actually get a good 4-piece set. Because until you get really good pieces in these 4-piece sets, you're better off just using 2-piece sets and also the quote-unquote stats over sets like I mentioned probably multiple times now. Stun set. Now, this is very niche as well. Where I use this the most is actually going to be my Faction Wars characters, but characters that I use that have AoE attacks a lot. And I kind of want to point out like Skullcrown, for example. So Skullcrown has actually a lot of this. I do have a stun set on them here, as you can kind of see a little bit here. As far as that, you know what? I'm going to take away the QR code that I probably should have taken away a long time ago, but you can see the full set here. And I do use this on characters that have basically, especially AoEs on the A1. It is mainly for the usage of faction crypts and other wave-based content where you want to stun them. What I like about it is that the stun set does have, if I click on here, right, it actually is an 18% chance to place stun debuff. This is very good on AoE attacks, and it also doesn't require accuracy. It does not require an accuracy check for you to be able to do. So some of my characters have it, but other than that, I think it's niche. But you can see some usage out of that, especially in the faction crypts area, and maybe things like Cursed City. If you make a couple of stun sets, that way you can shift them around. That might work for you. Now, moving on to some of the other ones, we have Hex, right? And this is very niche as well. I'll be honest, I sell this stuff, but I just want to give it some acknowledgement, I suppose. Some people like using Hex set as well, but I haven't really used this very much. There's so many sets in Raid Shadow Legends that it's just you don't really have the time to use all of these, right? There's just so many of them. Sorry, Cursed set, but that's what it does. It's I even said it wrong, but it places a Hex debuff, 50% chance to place a Hex debuff for 2 turns. You might be able to get some usage out of this on, say, an attacker-based Hex set, maybe on something like Hydra or Spider, where you want to spread this debuff. If you don't have anyone else that can apply it, you could then use certain characters that could maybe spread the Hex debuff to other characters on the Hydra heads or on the Spiders, that kind of thing. But outside of that, I think it's very niche, and that's why I still think it's pretty low on the list. Now, I don't remember what this one is. So everything just gets into the sea right away. I know, I've been playing this for so long, but it just goes to show that I don't provoke set. It just goes to show 30% chance to place provoke. Again, very niche for something like Hydra, but it requires 4 pieces in order to activate. You might as well just get a provoker instead. That's just my thoughts. So I actually probably going to put it in the cell category because I think that's where it deserves to be. Now regeneration. I'm gonna put this in the A category because you really should be keeping good regeneration set items pieces because regeneration is very important for a lot of solo builds that exist in Raid Shadow Legends because and things like Amius in Cursed City, there are some champions that can solo that as well, but you need some really good pieces of regeneration gear. Also, the Godseeker Aniri for Sand Devil Necropolis, this kind of solo duo build. Where the heck is my regeneration? But yeah, you do need quite a lot of good pieces. I already have some of them equipped to my characters, like Aniri that you can kind of see here. Actually, well, I have a set that I've already built. It does take a while in order to get an actual good set. Oh yeah, my inventory is full, so I can't move my gear around. But yeah, I do have regeneration. It's very good in combination with Immortal, which we'll talk about as well for this HP regeneration stuff that you need. So there you go. It's a heal on turn. It is very important for these solo and duo builds. So yes, I would make sure to keep these artifact pieces around. Now we've come to retaliate. Now this is probably very niche for arena, and I do kind of want to acknowledge this one a little bit, right? I don't use it, but there are some people, who might. I don't know. Do people put retaliate on a Marius? I'm not sure. My don't look at my Marius gear. It needs a lot of work. But characters who have some really strong A1 attacks, especially AOE, I've definitely seen people use the retaliate set on that. I mean, it's definitely better than the other one that counterattacks that I can't remember now, but it's a 15% chance to counterattack when hit on a 2-piece, right? And this does stack. So if you had 6 pieces, hypothetically, if you had 6 really good pieces, you would get up to 45%. So not too bad there, right? If you have some good pieces, might as well save them. I'm going to put it in the C category, though, because it's very niche, and I do think that people just use it mostly for arena. Toxic set. Some people are going to hate me for putting in this in the cell category, but honestly, I just don't. This would be very early Demon Lord clan boss, right? But there's so many characters out right now that do poisons that you don't need to stack a toxic set on top of this to add even more poisons. That's just my thoughts. They've had characters like Xenomorph, and now we have Ezio, and then there's like the free Narma champion, right? Tons of ways to get poison out there, and I just don't think you really need to use the toxic set on top. Immunity. I'm going to put in the C category. So I have not personally used this a ton. However, I do understand because we'll talk about an easier way to get that kind of stuff. But I do want to talk about that. And where is immunity in my list? Do I have any? Did I sell all of it? I might have sold all of it. Do I actually not have any? Oh, there we go. So immunity for 2 turns on spawn. You can get this with Feral for pretty much the same thing. And you might as well just do that, I guess. It's actually really unclear. It's the same thing. Despite what it says, you get a 2-turn block debuffs, which you get from the 4-piece of Feral. I don't like that it doesn't say that specifically on the set or immunity. It says immunity for 2 turns, but really it's the same thing. It's 2 turns of block debuffs. And Feral is a much better set. It's hard to get, yes, I understand. But if you're using this for like niche PvP instances, you might as well just wait for the Feral set anyway. So I'm going to put this in the C tier, but I'll be honest that I also have not really used it all that much. So do take that with a grain of salt. Savage is solidly in the A tier because it's going to be some of the easiest ignore defense sets for attackers that you can possibly get in the game before, some of the more harder to get ignored defense. This, you're going to be using Savage when you want to move your attacker characters specifically into, do I have any? I think my Wukong has an old Savage set. I don't really use the Savage set as much anymore because I've kind of leaned into more advanced sets, things like Instinct from the Forge Pass. I have Fatal now, or not Fatal, Lethal, sorry, from Doom Tower Hard, from the Dark Fae, There's things like Slayer, there's Merciless, there's other more advanced sets. But I would say once you're at that point that you need to move on from stats and into better DPS gear, you're probably going to want to make a 4-piece Savage set because you are going to ignore defense with that, and it is very important. I might not use this so much anymore, but it is that entry level into better DPS gear. It does come from Fire Knight though, which is a bit harder to farm. You're not going to be doing this as free. It's definitely not as easy as Dragon, but it is still an important set piece that I do want to kind of make sure that people understand that yes, it is worth keeping around and it is worth farming when it is available, especially when it's featured in Fire Knight dungeons as well. It's important to get some of this. So that's going to be the Savage set. Let's talk about Shielding set. This is niche, but I'm going to put it. I guess if destroys in C, let's just put it towards the top of C. I feel like this stuff, this shielding set, it's really important for a Scarab King, right? Like I mentioned before, because Scarab King's whole thing is that if you don't have shields, then you are going to get counterattacked by his AoE, and often you're going to lose because you're going to be constantly provoked. So the shields are very important if you do not have characters, the right characters, to have this. But it is only for the first couple of turns on spawn, so do keep that in mind. Other than that, I don't feel, again, it's a very good set to kind of push for in the general usage of the game. But you might get some niche use out of it that you might not want to sell right immediately. Now, Cruel. This is going to be coming from your Demon Lord, right? And I'm going to put this in the B tier, but it's only useful for attacker-based champions. Attack-based champions is what I meant. Attack-based DPS champions is really what I wanted to say there. So Cruel, right, comes from Cruel and Immortal, which comes from the Demon Lord. Attack plus 15%, ignores 5% of enemies' defense. So it's a great two-piece set, but only for DPS champions that kind of scale with attack. It's not going to work. You're not going to really get a lot of usage out of it for defense or HP percent based DPS champions. So do keep that in mind. So it does have a very niche DPS or use, but it does give you a little bit of ignored defense, so it's worth including if you have a lot of, some good pieces. And I have a lot that I need to sell, yes, because it stacks up every single day from running Demon Lord. Okay, that is your Cruel set. Then we're also going to be talking about Immortal, and I'm also going to put this in the same category, but not as high as Regeneration. Now, again, the same thing. You have your two-piece Immortal set, so HP plus 15%, heals by 3% every turn, so it's going to be useful as a filler set with Regeneration, so you get like one set of Regeneration, one set of Immortal. That's going to be helpful for those characters who are, wanting to get a lot of healing per turn, especially the solo builds. It's also going to help you reach your HP goals better. Those solo builds for bosses often require a lot of HP, so getting your HP even higher with Immortal is going to help. Hell, you could stack 3 of these if you really want to, if you have some really good gear pieces, and that'll give you a lot of HP for, say, healer champions as well. Healer support champions who heal based on the amount of HP that they have. Or maybe, if you get some really good pieces, you might be able to make some sort of like DPS set for HP-based champions as well. So Immortal is pretty good. I'd probably use this more actually than Cruel, because Cruel, unfortunately, is only usable by attack-based champions. But I do want to acknowledge it a little bit. So it's not A tier, but it's definitely solidly in the B tier. Relentless. Relentless is good for the characters that can use them. They are also pretty hard to get. Now, Relentless, I spoke about this before when talking about Reflex, but I do like to use good Relentless pieces, if you can find it, that have high speed, for example, for support-based champions, because that allows you to take more turns. If your support champions can get more turns, that means they can buff faster, and they can get, make sure, of course, that those buffs are always on your characters, right? That's pretty important. There are some other niche uses as well, like for Minute, for example, I do have a Relentless set that I prefer to use on him to get multiple turns back to back. Where is Minute, right? There we go, with like a 4-piece. I swear, even though it's only an 18% trigger chance, that it happens more than that. This is just a tinfoil hat thing. Sometimes if you've used Relentless sets, you feel like you get like a couple of turns back to back. I guess you got really lucky, but it feels that sometimes it's a little bit more than 18%. So I do like the Relentless set. It's a bit tricky to get because you need to do well on tournaments. Now, is this Stone Cleaver? Now, no, sorry. It is it's these garbage ones from the Forge that I've like never in my wildest. Sorry, Deflection and Swift Parry. Now, I might be the weird ones here that don't actually use this because it is a these are probably PvP based sets, and why I don't really recommend them very highly because they also take the same materials that you need to craft perception and resilience. I actually don't use resilience that much either, which means I could I guess craft swift parry, but I'll be honest that I just really haven't done this. Speed, crit damage, 50% chance of unkillable when hit with a fatal hit. Again, PvP based. So yeah, I don't know, guys. I'm gonna be putting both of these in the C category, but that's just me because I can't count many times where I actually crafted this gear and used it. It's a 4-piece set. I think it's very niche. I don't know if it's worth using, especially your perception pieces and swift parry or whichever one it was, instead of just crafting perception. We have the divine pieces again. I'm gonna put them all in the same one, except for the speed. I'm gonna put in B. So we have divine offense. We have divine healing. I think it is. No, this is divine offense. Divine crit. This one's divine crit, and then divine speed. Right? There's 4 of them and you can only get them in certain parts of the game, which is related to arena, right? We have classic arena. We have where I think it only comes from these chests. In fact, right? You can see it here: divine offense, divine crit, divine life. Sorry, my bad, and then divine speed. But of course, out of all of that, the things that's going to be the most important is going to be speed. So if you do happen to get any pieces, then you can try and use them, but you're just not going to get, you only get those chests like once a week. So it really doesn't happen very often. So it is what it is, right? That's just how I've decided to do that. If you can get some really good, like, because they're 2-piece sets. So if you get a really nice, like, divine speed kind of set pieces, I guess, that you can use to squeeze out a 2-piece, then great. Now we have a bunch of these Doom Tower sets. So I'm going to rapid fire this one a little bit. Affinity Breaker. I'm going to put in the C as well. Affinity Breaker is very niche. I want to jump back to the Forge in-game. This comes from the Spider boss. Nether Spider? No, I forget which one it is. Yeah, it might be Nether Spider. I clicked on the wrong thing. Forge, Artifact Crafting, Affinity Breaker. Crit damage 30%, 50% chance to change weak hit to critical hit. This is just going to have most value in Shogun, Phantom Shogun. But you can definitely beat this without having an Affinity Breaker set, and I don't think I've ever equipped one. I'm going to be perfectly honest. So for that reason, I have to put it in the C just to acknowledge that it has some niche use. Maybe I might, in fact, actually put these down here. I'm going to, now let's keep Divine Crit up there, Divine Offense down in the trash silver bin. We have Fatal, right? This is Fatal from Doom Tower. I'm also going to put this in the C. But some people might use this. I did actually use this. I clicked off that by accident. I have actually used this in the early parts of the game. Attack 15%, crit rate 5%. It is also very easy to get. The Magma Dragon is one of the easier bosses in Doom Tower, so you might actually get some decent items out of this. And if you can get some really good pieces, then I would use it. So it's definitely usable in that usable list, but it's not good enough to be in that B tier. This is from Bommel, right? Bommel. Resistance. Which one's this one again? Down here. Fortitude. Resistance and defense. Sorry guys. I really don't think it's very good. So this is going to go into the trash bin of the silver list here. So I've moved this one over here. Down here we have Fatal up in C. This other one from the other dragon. What's this? Bone Dragon? Eternal Dragon, right? That's in the trash bin as well. Which set is this? Is so much that I haven't even ever touched it. We have the Bloodthirst. Oh, actually, where did I put? So it's actually a little bit. It's like the enhanced version of Lifesteal. Where did I put Lifesteal? Did I put Lifesteal down in the trash? I didn't. Okay, so then I have to put this like up in the C tier, right? If Lifesteal's up there, then definitely this one has to. Super niche, right? Like you're just not going to use. Like I said about Leech. Leech is just a better debuff to use instead of that. I'll leave it in there, but honestly, I sell quite a few of these things that are in the C tier as well. I would kind of focus on the better ones up here. Now, this is on top. Oh crap! What's this one called? There's so many. I'm sorry, guys. There's so many. Untouchable. I knew that. Immunity for 2 turns. Resistance 40. Right? If immunity is trash, then so is untouchable. It's an extra 40 resistance, but realistically, at the end of the day, you're probably not going to get much use out of that. I'm actually, you know what? I got to be honest with myself here. You know, most of these things, um, I'm probably not going to use. I gotta fix this at the last minute here. I'm gonna leave it there, but some of these other ones deserve to go in the trash bin. Frost Bite. There is actually a Romantu mission, I believe, that makes you actually equip that. But yeah, with the block freeze debuffs, 10% chance to place a free. No, it's not happening. It is a two-piece set, but yeah, it's totally not happening. So I don't like that one either. Lethal, S tier, absolutely S tier. Lethal is the best crafted set in the game, honestly. Lethal, crit rate 10%, so the crit rate that you need to have, and then ignores 25% of the enemy's defense. This is a very good set. And whenever Dark Fate comes around, you're gonna see a video out on my channel about how good Lethal is and why you need to farm this for 30 days. This is the best DPS set because it combines crit rate, which is so important for any DPS characters, whether you're attack, defense, or HP based champion, and it ignores 25% of the enemy's defense. So very, 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 very good set. And yes, it gets into the S tier. Okay, so what do we have left? We have Guardian from the Griffin. I'm gonna put this in C tier because I put the crap. What's this one called again? Stalwart in there too. It's basically an upgraded Stalwart, so I don't want to put it into B tier because I don't want to overstate how good it is. But it absorbs 10% of all damage dealt to ally champions, so it's similar in that way to Stalwart, and then it heals by 10% for every turn. So if you have a really solid tank defense based character but does not have ally protection, then this is just kind of like a minor version of that ally protection instead. So I have used this occasionally in clan boss. Depends on the champion, right? You don't want to put this on champions that can't take the damage. So make sure you're very careful about who you're using this on, but it can be a very niche set to use. So I will acknowledge that one. We have Impulse. This is in live arena and a bit hard to get. Now, Impulse. Okay, I mean let's talk about this a little bit because we're kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here on some of these sets. I should still have some pieces here of Impulse. It is a two-piece. It does have speed. So 12% speed and a 12% chance to reduce a random skill cooldown by one turn. So it's combining speed and reflex. And the 12% is pretty good, considering that the speed set itself is 12%, right? So it's basically an upgraded version of that. It's just you're not going to get very many pieces of this, but I do want to acknowledge it. I'm going to move it outside. I'm actually going to put it up into the B tier. Actually, I guess it should be up in the A tier with speed, right? If speed's at 12%, but I want to acknowledge that it's harder to get. So while it is a really good set and it's good for support characters, if you can get some good pieces, you're not going to get as many pieces on this because it comes from occasional chests on live arena when you're doing that. You're just not going to get as much of this. Instinct. This is a Forge Pass set. I really like this. I'm going to put it up in A tier. It is not as good as Lethal, but it is still very solid. I do have to acknowledge that, you know, a lot of my characters do run the Instinct set, right? And I have to fix my gear around. I can't even fix my gear because I'm at 2,000 spots, so it won't let me swap my gear. But for a lot of my DPS characters, I do run Instinct. Speed 12% and ignores 20% of enemies' defense. So it's not as good as Lethal. It is also Forge Pass only, but it is very solid. And if you have the opportunity to get the Forge Pass for this, I do recommend it. It is going to help you get some of that DPS set, the gear that you need for DPS characters a little bit better. And it does have that added bonus of having speed. So all of this is kind of better than Savage, right? Instinct's better than Savage. Lethal's better than Savage, for example. You know, so that's why I don't use a lot of Savage anymore because I have alternatives to that now. So Instinct over there. I think this one's called Killstroke. Now, this one can be got very neat. I think it's actually in my market, in my bazaar, or my clan shop, like right now. Killstroke. So contains a random Killstroke artifact, crit damage 20%, speed 5%. The problem is the only way that I'm aware of that you can get this gear is through buying it in the clan shop. And I just don't think it's good value. It's totally random. Like maybe, but where did I put it? Sorry. I put it here in C. I think that's probably where it deserves to be, right? If crit damage is in C, then definitely I think that we're gonna put Killstroke into C as well. I think that that's where it deserves to be there. Okay, so we're getting a little bit less now. Let's talk about resilience. Also going to go into C. So resilience is that other one that's not perception, and it gives you 10% HP and 10% defense. It's a very early game set, but on the other hand, with perception, which is really good, and you're still going to continue to use that, resilience really drops off, in my opinion. Again, if you're in that period where you're kind of desperate for gear or you have a really good piece, go ahead and use it. But long term, later in the game, you're probably not going to get a ton of value out of that. Perception, however, I actually want to put this in A, right? Like, I think this is really good that I use perception even still now with some good pieces because it has some of the best stats in the game. The two most important stats in the game, in my opinion, for any debuffer is going to be um, accuracy and speed, right? So we need to talk about the perception bonus. 40%, sorry, plus 40 accuracy and plus 5% speed. So it's not as much as the speed set, but it's a combination of both. So for debuffers, who those are the two most important stats, it's very good to use perception. Early game, mid game, late game, I have it still. If I have some really good pieces, it's a good way to get both of those stats. Now, over time, you might not need as much accuracy, so this could fall, especially once your Great Hall ends up getting maxed out in the accuracy, and you don't really need the 40 accuracy from some of these pieces. But, it depends on what you're doing. Like for Fabian, I like to have a lot of accuracy and I like to have a lot of speed. So this is something that I still use. At least a two piece. Right now I have some feral and I have some speed artifact sets on my character here as well. So I do want to acknowledge the perception set. It is very good to have. So it's definitely going to be up in the A tier for me. Protection. I love these. We're starting to get into the 9-piece sets. Very solid. I'm going to put it in the S tier. Protection, which comes from Hydra, is super important, right? Like, I can't understate this enough. To get a full 9-piece, though, can be quite challenging here. But, the kind of stuff that it does, it allows you to place protected buffs. And what this means is you can't have it reduced, you can't have it stolen, you can't have it stripped, anything like that. It is not just a PvP importance, but also a PvE, going up against bosses like Hydra, who steal buffs, and maybe others that do as well. This is very helpful at a 9-piece set, which is going to take you a while, but it's a 75% chance to place a protected buff, and then allies deal 5% more damage per buff placed by the wearer. So you definitely want to put it on buffer type characters, right? Great characters are biased. I also want to get one eventually, full 9-piece set for my Donatello as well. That's, for example, some things that I want to do. You're going to get this in Hydra. You're going to get a lot of it, but it's going to be slow to get really good pieces. So I do want to kind of point that out. Okay, protection, absolutely amazing. Stone Skin. Also going to be putting this in the... I'm going to put this in the A tier. Stone Skin is good, right? Stone Skin is good, but I feel like it's more PvP centered, right? You're going to see a lot of this in PvP, but you're also going to be finding more characters now that kind of have ways to get around Stone Skin, to strip Stone Skin, stuff like that. And so while it still has a lot of value, it has a little bit less value, I think, than it did before. That's just my thoughts. Again, that's the secondary set from Hydra, Protection, and Stone Skin. You're going to get it from your Hydra clan boss battles. Supersonic. This is a 9-piece set. I'm going to put it in the B tier category. Why? I use this very nichely. I use this on... Maybe I'm overstating how good it is. So my Donatello does have some supersonic pieces. I use it mostly... Sorry, that's protection. I clicked on the wrong one. Down here, supersonic. So it does have a 10% speed buff on a 3-piece. It does have accessories as well. You get this from Cursed City. So Merciless and Supersonic are the two main sets that come from Cursed City. Comes with resist, HP percent. It's a bit of a filler set for me. I don't actually do it for the 4-piece, 6-piece, 9-piece sets. Okay? So maybe actually I should lower this. But it is a very easy way to get this 3-piece bonus if you need it for additional speed. Sometimes I use it in my main slots, not so frequently, but sometimes I do. Otherwise, you can also get it in your accessory slots, and it's better than having a regular item, right? Okay, so I'm probably overstating what it is, and so for that reason, I'm gonna have it in the B, but I'm gonna keep it in the low B just because it's a 9-piece set. Merciless, easy S tier. Outside of lethal, this is probably actually, in fact, better than lethal in a lot of ways, but it's very hard to complete the full set. So I do have one character who actually has a 9 piece, and it's my first axe Tuskor. So I do want to kind of talk about this a little bit here. That the set bonuses, if you're not familiar with Merciless, my only issue of a little bit is that it is based on attacker based champions. I have a 6 piece, sorry, not 9 piece. But yeah, for defense and HP based champions, it's definitely still usable because if you look at what the other set bonuses give, especially 4 piece and 9 piece, 15% chance of getting an extra turn, 30% chance to decrease a random skill's cooldown by 1 when dealing damage, which can happen pretty frequently. It's best for attack based champions, but other people can use it. And also, that 6 piece gives 35% ignored defense, which is pretty whopping. So, I do want to acknowledge that as well. But getting merciless accessories is a massive grind, guys. This comes mostly from Cursed City hard mode, only a specific few nodes, and then by killing Amius himself, which can be quite a bit of a task for most players. But other than that, it is one of the top DPS sets in the game, which is why it gets a S tier. Now we're down to Righteous. This is a Forge Pass set. However, because it is resistance based, I'm not a big fan of this. So I don't know. Do I have any? I'm not sure if I actually have any in my. Maybe I do. Righteous. Is it somewhere in here? No, no. Really, I don't have any. Okay, so righteous. It should be in the forge though, just so I can show you guys what the actual set bonus is. Or am I still sitting on it? Here we go. No, weird. I must have sold everything. So it's speed plus 10%, resist plus 40. Speed is good, but okay, so it's a Forge Pass only, which is where I take issue with it. I'm gonna put it in the B tier just because obviously if speed is up here, then I guess 10%. It's not as much as the speed artifact set. If you have some good pieces, go for it, right? It would be good for your support based champions, especially your buffer type ones. But it's gonna be very niche and only comes around once every how long? Like for some of these to come back around, so you're not gonna see it very often. Bolster, same thing. I am, however, going to put it in the B category because it combines the shield set and it combines the regeneration set a little bit. So bolster is something that I do have actually. So protected, 30% HP ally shield for 3 turns, and then heals by 10% every turn. So again, combining shield with the regeneration set. So it is a little bit better here. It is a touch less on the heal per turn, but 3 turns, this can be really good for Scarab King. However, it is a Forge Pass set, which means, once again, it's only going to come around every so often. There's quite a few of these, actually, in fact, that we're going to run over really quick. Then we have the Slayer set, which is ongoing right now, or we're finishing up soon. I am going to put this in the A tier. I do like the Slayer set, but it's very specific in terms of what the good pieces, right? So you get it. It's a variable set. I need to go into the game, actually. It's probably better if I just do that. And we go into the game, and we go to Slayer. Is that I am? There's so many sets. Good God. Okay, so crit rate, crit damage, speed fills this champion's turn meter by the 5% of the first hit on each enemy from AoE attacks, and then a 6 piece ignores 30% defense, but only when using AoE skills. I like Slayer as a filler set, especially when the first 3 pieces, crit rate, crit damage, and speed. I prefer it on accessories. That way it doesn't interfere with anything that you do in your main set. So, okay, maybe I'm being a bit too generous here. Let's move it down to B tier, actually. But it is a very solid B tier. I would actually put it like up here towards the front. Like, because I think that it is better than, obviously, crit rate sets. If you have some good Slayer piece sets, I have been known to use them. Okay, we have Defiant. Let's scroll this up. Defiant set is interesting. Let's go to the Forge for that one. And let's see. Defiant. Defense plus 10%, minus 15% damage taken from AoE attacks. So this is like, what's the other one? The other one that does that but is 30%, right? So this is a 2-piece set. Where did I put that one? Stalwart. God, there's so many sets in this game. Defiant. Yeah, it's not bad, but it's a Forge Pass set, so you're not going to see it that often. I'd probably put it in the C tier, honestly, along with Stalwart as well. It's just like a half version of Stalwart. Zeal. Zeal. That's an interesting one. That is going to come from your live arena as well on the other side of what Impulse was. We talked about it. So Zeal is a more crit-based damage, 20% crit damage, 3% damage for every 25% HP this champion has. I think it's more PvP focused. It's okay as a filler, again, but it's not like a main set. If you have a really good piece to use, though, and you can make a really good two-piece set that's a filler for some other four-piece set that you have, great. And that's going to get you extra crit damage. But by and large, I don't go out of my way. Also, I don't live arena that much. So I'm going to put it in the low B tier, but it is viable. You just have to have some good pieces for that. Feral. I love Feral. Feral is going into the 9-piece set because it has a lot of accuracy and is very helpful for early and mid-game players. However, you only get Feral through Siege, which does make it a little bit challenging. But as far as the bonuses that you get out of this, you get 40 accuracy, 5% speed, more accuracy, and then at 4-piece, you get a block debuff for 2 turns at the start of the round. This is very good for PvP as well. More speed if you keep going. I don't think you really need to go beyond like a 4-piece set. I don't think it's that useful, but getting at least the 4-piece Feral is very helpful. Also, if you play enough Siege, you're eventually going to come across like, I don't know, feral accessories, right? Whether it's like I have stuff, right? Like I on different characters, it's a good way to get just a cheap, even 1-piece. It's a very cheap way to just get 40 accuracy when you have a good banner or you have a good ring or whatever, and it'll just get you that extra stats that you need. I do like Feral, and I think it's very helpful. However, you only get this in Siege, which happens once every 2 weeks. It alternates with clan versus clan, right? The next one's going to be coming up in 5 days for me. But I do like the set. I think it's worth using. Then we have Pinpoint. I love the Pinpoint accessories, but I don't like the Pinpoint gear. Okay? So Pinpoint over here, I'm going to put in the A tier as well, but not for the gear. And mostly it's going to be for the accessories, which we have not seen in some time. Pinpoint has not been around for a while, but I do have a lot of it from like early slash the first half of 2025, right? So the Pinpoint as a set here, accuracy, speed, accuracy, but that 10% speed at a 2-piece is typically more than some of the other accessories. So I do want to acknowledge that. It is good for that. I don't really care much about the other stuff after that, the 4-piece and beyond, but the first 2/3 pieces, especially on accessories, is very helpful for accuracy and speed. Like I mentioned about accuracy from Feral. So I am going to put it on A tier, low A tier, but mainly for the accessories. There's 4 left. Okay, we have 2 pieces from the new live arena seasons. We have Rebirth and Stonecleave. Now, I think I'm going to put them both in the C tier. Honestly, do I have some gear of this? I think I do. Then maybe I still have around, or I just kept for the purposes of this video. We have Stonecleaver, and we have Rebirth. So these are new variable sets here. Stonecleaver, attack, crit damage, and speed. More damage is super niche. Damage to stone skin and all of this. I mean, these days you might as well just like completely remove the stone skin, I think. Then, you know, it just... Yeah, you're not going to get very much of this either unless you're doing it's seasonal live arena. So it's even harder to get than stuff like Impulse and Zeal. Rebirth, this one here, resistance, speed, resistance, grants HP and turn meter to allies revived by the wearers. It's super niche. Like, I don't think anyone's really using this. So, I don't know. I'll put this in the C tier just to be nice, but I haven't touched any of this. This leads us to some of the more recent ones. We have Chronophage. I'm going to acknowledge it for its accessories because you always want to use accessories that are not base ones. If you're able to do this for any 9-piece artifacts, accessory pieces, they're worth doing, right? Do I have some Chronophage? I do. What does it do? Resistance, speed, resistance. Getting that 2-piece, that speed 10% in your accessory section is going to be very helpful. Whether that's Pinpoint, whether that's Chronophage, you know, that's going to be very helpful for you to be able to get some additional speed. So I do want to acknowledge that. The immutable stack blocks an attempt to increase skill cooldown. I feel like they designed this set entirely to counter characters like Alice the Wanderer, like Fabian, characters that reduce the cooldown, increase the cooldowns of champions. That's it. Mostly a PvP thing, but for everyone else, for normal people, we're going to use this for the 2-piece set here for the speed 10%. So I will acknowledge it for a low B tier. And finally, that brings us to the latest one, which is Mercurial. I'm going to acknowledge it for the same reason as Chronophage for the accessories, but honestly, I have not made an a Mercurial set yet to date. I do have a lot of Mercurial gear, but I just haven't actually actively used it. Like you can see all of this Mercurial gear that I need to sort from my Grim Forest. Resistance, HP 15%, speed 8%, and a 3-piece. It is less than the 10% speed that you get from a 2-piece on the Chronophage and the Pinpoint gear. So as far as accessories go, you have to wear more of this in order to get there. Mercurial accessories are not particularly quick to get. So I do want to, kind of point that out. Total Guard, also not so easy to get either. My apologies, I've been talking a long time in this video. So Total Guard blocks all incoming damage and associated effects. Now this sounds great at the start of the round, and this could be really good for some more defensive-based characters, maybe some revivers, in fact. Actually, this could be very nice. That way they can survive, and that way that they'll actually get their revives off. Yeah, maybe I don't have enough good gear. I need to experiment with it a bit more. So I don't want to be too mean about it. I'm going to put it in the B tier, but I would love to know some thoughts from you guys if anyone's actually used Mercurial and where you would place that. I'm not saying this is a perfect list by any means, but this is more in terms of the sets that I use in my game. And I mostly just stick to stuff here in the B and above category. Everything else is pretty much a sell for me. But I do want to acknowledge that some of these do have niche uses that some of you might use. But for me, but a year into the game, this is pretty much it here on the top layer, right? Like you're overusing a lot of these sets a lot more than others. That's just my thoughts. And basically only about a third of the sets have any value in the game when you're beyond like 6 months. But that's just me, and I would love to know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Now, before we go, I do want to remind people that if you haven't started playing yet and you want to make a new account, make an alt account, then what are you waiting for? Download using the QR code in the top right hand of the screen to get an Arm of the Returned absolutely free. And also these 3 amazing epics. We have Allure, we have Tagore, and we have Ruella at accounts 10, 20, and 30. And I realized that my QR code was not actually up, but it is now. And you can also download to get to Hanaraki. Sorry, use the promo code Desert Queen to get the Void Legendary Support Champion to Hanoraki. She's absolutely amazing. Desert Queen within the first 48 hours of a brand new account. That's it for me, everybody, and I'll see you guys all on the next video. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you'll be greatly helping out the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.